This past year has been a fearful one for me, more so than many years, maybe any other year. There have only been 2 times in my life when, or I guess I should say 2 seasons in my life when I've experienced, I'm not even sure what the language is, if it's a panic attack or anxiety attack. But this past year is one of the 2 seasons when I've experienced that. And whatever it is, it feels, if you've ever been in the ocean and there's a big wave coming and you feel that pull, the water's rushing toward the wave that's coming toward you. And depending on how deep the water is and where you are in it, there's nothing you can do about it. You're just being sucked toward that wave. And you just get caught up in it. That's the sensation, as I would describe it. That's how it feels to me when I feel a anxiety attack coming on. I can feel it coming. I can feel that rush. And I know it's going to overtake me, and there's nothing I can do about it. I remember the first time it happened this year. It was earlier this year, and the medicine that I was on wasn't working. It was months after my diagnosis, so we knew that it was vestibular migraine. We knew it was being aggravated by my type 1 diabetes, and that it had created this feedback loop. And so we were trying to break that loop with some medicine. And nothing that we'd tried had worked so far. And I was laying in bed next to Sarah. We had gone to bed. And I remember I was just thinking about it. I was just thinking about the fact that nothing that we were trying was working. And I remember that sensation, the wave coming, that wave of fear. And it just swept over me. It just kind of crashed in on me. And my reaction was I reached out and grabbed Sarah's hand, and I just held on to it. And I don't know if she was awake or not. I can't remember if she, squeezed back or something. I don't know. But I remember holding on to her hand and that feeling like an anchor. Something about holding on to her hand felt very immovable in the midst of this wave that was kind of sucking me under. I didn't tell her that night what was going on. I didn't tell her that I was scared. I didn't tell her that night. I didn't tell her the next day. And it kept happening. These waves of fear, these anxiety attacks kept happening. And little things could trigger it. I would be surprised, actually, at some of the things that would trigger this response to me. And I didn't tell her for quite a while. And when I finally did tell her, it was difficult to do. It was difficult to admit. I don't know why there is... Well, I'm sure I could come up with a few reasons, but there's something inside me that says a 34-year-old man shouldn't be scared. And if he is scared, he certainly shouldn't admit it to the people around him. There's something about that that doesn't seem right. And there's something about that feeling that's shameful, that's not manly or adult, or I'm not even sure where all that comes from. But I do think it's baloney. And here's why. Because the problem is, the longer I kept that fear to myself, the more powerful it got. And the more under its control I felt. A way that I've thought about it, analogizing it, another way is it feels like a bubble, this oppressive bubble that just shrinks and shrinks and gets harder to burst and be free from. But there was something, I think, true in that instinct to reach out and grab Sarah's hand. And while it didn't necessarily stop that wave of fear from overcoming me, I think what I realized is the way that I respond to that fear when it comes directly impacts the amount of power it has over me. And by isolating, by kind of giving into that fear, I'm allowing it to take root. I'm giving it space in my life. But I don't have to do that. I can choose to reach out to someone. I can reach outside that bubble and find an anchor, because the storm that I'm experiencing, they're not experiencing. I told my wife several days later, I can't remember exactly how long, but I told her that I was scared. I told her exactly what I was scared of. I told her that I was scared of losing the life that I had planned on. I was scared of losing my body and my body's ability to do what I always thought it would be able to do, or at least should be able to do at 34 years old. I told her I was afraid of dying, and even though that has there's nothing about my conditions right now and the way they're being managed that's like fatal, or that has no foundation in reality, but it was still a genuine fear. I felt like I was figuratively losing my life, and that also translated to a literal fear of losing my life. Sharing my fear with her in that way and naming it was so freeing of its power. It was like strapping on a life jacket. And she could remind me of the hope that I still had, that I had always had, but that my fears had managed to blind me to. Again, she wasn't necessarily experiencing, I mean, I'm sure she has fears of her own, but the storm that I was in, she was not in. And I realized that fear will only take what I'm willing to give it. And I'm not willing to give it anything. And when I'm weak, when I'm discouraged, when I'm already prone to fear and to give in to fear, I need the help of others to break that. I need to reach outside my own bubble. And so I started calling friends and family. I would call my wife, my parents, my in-laws. I went online. I played games with friends. I went outside and visited with neighbors. I called friends and coworkers and I invited them to come visit me. I did all I could to connect with other people. Anytime I felt that fear coming on, I found someone somewhere and just connected with it. I didn't necessarily say, hey, I'm terrified, would you talk to me? I just tried to talk to this person. I found a connecting point beyond myself. And the attack stopped. The anxiety, the fear, those waves stopped. Even though the medicine still wasn't working, even though nothing had changed in my circumstances. I don't want to forget how important human connection is to disarming fear. And I have built up an army of friends and family and coworkers and other people, maybe you, if you're watching this, who have helped me battle fear and have victory over it, and you probably had no idea. But you saved my hope. Those people saved my hope when fear would steal it. So I want to remember to reach out when I'm scared, and to not be afraid to say I'm scared when that's appropriate. And I also want to be as available to others as they have been to me.